The water is gone, but the mess remains. Hundreds of people are forced to evacuate due to flooding at a downtown homeless shelter.
It's just a feeling of, what are you going to do now? Everything that you had was there.
A challenging year of rebuilding. KPBS looks back at the North County Lilac Fire and how a community has changed.
There were some deficiencies identified in the mishap where we said we think we can do things better.
And a decade later, a look at what changed in the Marine Corps after one of its jets crashed into a San Diego neighborhood. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hello, and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. It will take several days to reopen a downtown homeless transition shelter. A tent structure run by the Alpha Project was overcome by floodwaters during last night's storm.
Yeah, we got raw sewage over here. It's our vans.
That's cell phone video shared by Alpha Project CEO Bob McElroy. The city of San Diego provided buses to move more than 300 people to the Mission Valley Stadium site, which is being used as a temporary shelter. The Alpha Project team spent the day trying to clean up the East Village location.
The water was up to the bottom bunk, so everything above that has not been contaminated. So we're just saying we're going to come in and get everything off the floor, have them come in and do all of their whatever they do, their cleaning, and then get to the process of putting our house back together again.
San Diego received more than 2 inches of rain over the past couple of days, but it was an intense period of thunderstorms last night that caused flooding in several neighborhoods. San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer has a few more days to support or reject a plan to address pollution and traffic in Barrio Logan. This week, the city council voted unanimously to pass a resolution to reroute big trucks away from residential streets. Friday morning, big rigs rumble down Boston Avenue in San Diego's Barrio Logan. This thoroughfare between 28th and 32nd Streets is the neighborhood's only area zoned exclusively as residential. Jerry Rivero is with the Environmental Health Coalition. Last year, his team counted 59 heavy trucks traveling these blocks in 2 hours. Many were cutting through the neighborhood to get to Interstate 5.
The concern is that there are heavy-duty trucks driving on a residentially zoned street and traveling in front of houses, in front of sensitive land uses, essentially. There are families that are living there. So the concern is that, and the emissions that are created by these diesel trucks as they're driving by, and those impacts on the health of residents.
What's the impact to a person's health?
Right, so there's studies that have shown that diesel particulates are small enough to enter the lungs and essentially enter the bloodstream. And that leads to, obviously, asthma, heart-related diseases, cancer, and early and premature deaths.
EHC counts the newly passed resolution as a win for residents. What is the win?
So the win is now that there's essentially an expansion of prohibited streets. Heavy-duty vehicle trucks are not allowed to drive on generally the core and a lot of the sensitive areas such as schools or residential areas. That's big. The other thing too is that there's a truck route linked to this and tied to this, which helps route those heavy-duty vehicles on Harbor Drive.
Rivero says in a community battling pollution from body shops in a nearby shipyard, it's a step in the right direction, but says enforcement is key.
This needs to be enforced. Lack of enforcement in the last resolution has kind of created an environment that trucks are still allowed to drive on these streets.
1 year ago tonight, a wildfire burned through homes and brush in North County. The Lila Fire destroyed dozens of homes and upended the lives of people at a senior living community in Fallbrook. We have extensive coverage tonight, including Matt Hoffman, on how the community has rebuilt. But first, KPBS reporter Eric Anderson with a look back at the fire itself.
Traffic backed up along Interstate 15 on that hot December day a year ago. Police were trying to keep people away from the area where a large plume of smoke towered over the landscape. A wildfire sparked in roadside brush beside Interstate 15 was whipped up by wind gusts approaching 80 miles an hour. County official Ron Lane told reporters that night that firefighters had a very rough day once the flames took off and began burning out of control.
There are going to be more evacuations. There are thousands of homes that are within the path of these fires, and every resident needs to take this very seriously.
Santa Ana winds happen in San Diego, but usually not in December. CAL FIRE's Isaac Sanchez says the late season wind event was already responsible for a number of fires to the north.
It was several days into a significant Santa Ana wind event. I believe this was the 7th or 8th fire that had broken out in Southern California.
The flames quickly reached a mobile home community near Interstate 15. Many of the houses were consumed by flames, but the people got out.
The public was ready to go. They made the decision to evacuate themselves. They didn't wait for the alerts to come, although the alert system was activated and folks were notified to evacuate in certain portions of the area that was impacted. But many people chose to evacuate on their own prior to those alerts coming out.
The quick action meant no human lives were lost, but the flames destroyed more than 200 buildings, 114 of them homes. Another 70 structures were damaged.
Salte!
And there was a tragedy at San Luis Rey Downs. Horses panicked as the swift-moving flames approached the stalls at the training center. 46 horses lost their lives in the confusion, even as hundreds more were rescued. State, federal, and local officials stepped in quickly to help with recovery efforts, and the San Diego Foundation's Regional Disaster Fund delivered more than $1.5 million in aid during the past year. The foundation's Connie Matsui says people had their lives turned upside down by the fire.
Many of them have limited incomes and limited mobility, and not always do we have the extensive resources at the government level or in the nonprofit area to be able to serve the complex needs that these people have. So this is where the disaster fund comes in.
A senior living community was especially hard hit. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman went to the Rancho Montserrat Country Club to see how the rebuilding is going.
3 years before that, it went all the way up and around.
Ruth Harris has lived at the Rancho Montserrat Country Club since 2012. She's seen fires in this area before and didn't think much about being evacuated last year.
My thought process, and a year ago basically was, we'll probably have to go stay at the beach for a few days because we don't have any electricity. It's going to go up and around us. And so that's kind of what we grabbed, a couple bags of clothes and pajamas, and that's it.
Harris would find out hours later that her home had been completely engulfed by flames.
You don't think. It's just, it's surreal. It's not going to happen to me. It made me physically ill the first time I saw it. Now it's just like, there are no feelings. It's just, that's what happened. It's a sinking feeling. It's just a feeling of, what are you going to do now? Everything that you had was there, and it's gone. It's still hard.
Harris says she lost items in the fire that were irreplaceable.
Family heirlooms, things that, my dad was a cabinet maker, so half my furniture was made by my dad. It's all gone. I mean, you can't replace those. It's those things that made you feel home. Those are the things that I miss. Those things that were either given to us or made by family members or handed down. My great-great-grandmother's, kitchen things that I had. My great-great-great-grandmother's sewing chair. It's gone, but I remember it.
Nearly everything Harris owned was destroyed in the fire, but she was able to salvage a couple of items.
The green tractor back there for the kids, we kept that. It kind of melted, but they love it, the grandkids, and my galvanized buckets up front. I kept those as a reminder. And then I've got, like I said, I've got one Christmas ornament. We hadn't put our Christmas tree up yet. We were going to do it that weekend.
The Rancho Monserrate Country Club missed its popular Christmas party last year because of the fire. This year, the party is sold out.
They want to be here. I mean, it's the biggest party of the year.
Harris says it's that sense of community that's helped her rebuild her life here.
That's what we do. I mean, that's the normal. Our parties, and that's the norm. That's what we do.
Jan Carver lives at the country club and helped evacuate residents last year.
I looked out, jumped in this little car and just started running around to the top because we have a lot of elderly people that don't have transportation and can't get out.
While helping people get out, Carver had her car covered in flame retardant. Today, she and others are able to look back on the fire and laugh about the little things.
I snuck in the next morning and drove around and
got my jewelry out.
I said, "Carol, I'm in the park." She said, "Oh, my diamonds were left on the..." And I said, "I'm on it."
I knew I wouldn't get another one if that one disappeared, so.
For Harris, getting her life back to normal has not been easy.
You're used to, going to this cupboard to grab this. I still, and it's been a year, go to look for something and go, I don't have that anymore. That's right, I had that before the fire.
It took her 9 months to get a new home.
Even though we've been in since September, I didn't feel at home. I didn't feel like it was my home. There was nothing in the house, even though it's brand new. New furniture, new things on the walls, nothing was mine. It's starting to feel like mine.
Harris wasn't alone. More than 70 homes were destroyed here. People in the community say aside from the fires, one of the hardest things to deal with was watching strangers come into their backyards.
We had to tell them, you can't come in, it's private property. You feel
violated,
invaded, and when we came back the Sunday after the fire to get in the house and get some meds, I was very upset because there was a news crew walking around and they were up on someone's property poking through it, and the policeman in our car got out and said, "Get out of there, that's somebody's house." That's an invasion of privacy because you have nothing left. There's rubble and there's people going through looking at your family pictures or broken china.
It's the looky-loos. Oh, let's see what happened, and had no idea of what, that picture of my husband standing in the middle of what used to be our bedroom, and there's nothing there, and these people just, driving by, checking it out. It's like, this is a private thing. That's why we kind of closed off the community.
There are still reminders here of what happened a year ago, but most of it has been cleaned up. A few homes still need to go in, and some landscaping is in the works. But for the most part, Rancho Monserrate has bounced back.
And never underestimate the power of seniors, 55 plus, because they regrouped like there was no tomorrow, and there was no stopping them. And it's been a beautiful thing.
Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Indicted San Diego Congressman Duncan Hunter will go to trial next September. Turned out San Diego Councilman David Alvarez will focus on border relations. And San Diego's cruise ship industry is on the rebound. Join us for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
Today marks 77 years since the Japanese attack on Hawaii's Pearl Harbor. Here in San Diego, a remembrance was held this morning on the deck of the USS Midway. Several Pearl Harbor veterans and World War II veterans were in attendance. In addition to remembering those lost in 1941, a moment of silence was held for Ray Chavez. He passed away last month in Poway. At 106 years old, he was the oldest survivor of the Pearl Harbor attack. 10 years ago today, a Marine jet crashed into a University City neighborhood, killing 4 people. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh has this look back at some of the lessons learned.
There's little sign of a fighter jet except a piece of the fuselage and cockpit.
The crash happened just before noon on December 8, 2008. Pia Montavati Sud was at home. The jet fighter grazed the tree in front of her house.
Yeah, it clipped it there. So that's where the knob is.
The plane crashed into the home across the street. Inside the home were a mother, her mother, and their 2 small children, all immigrants from Korea.
The next morning we came back, and then that was the saddest part of the whole thing. We can see from our living room the cadaver dog looking for the young girl, the 2-year-old, who was by the door. That's where they found her.
Yeah, we're trending up.
The current commander of Marine Air Station Miramar says several things changed throughout the Marine Corps after the crash.
What it did for us is like all mishaps. It made us go back and look at the way we were doing business.
According to the crash investigation, the pilot was about to land on the USS Abraham Lincoln when there was a problem with the left engine. The pilot was becoming certified to operate on a carrier. He was told by his squadron to return to Miramar when another malfunction impacted the other engine.
That fuel stopped transfer into the operating engine at the time.
And was that a malfunction, or was it pilot error, or?
It was both.
Listening to his squadron, the pilot actually flew by Naval Air Station North Island. By the time he came out of the clouds over University City, he was out of fuel. The pilot tried to steer towards a canyon before ejecting. He survived the crash.
There were some deficiencies identified in the mishap that we said we think we can do things better.
Colonel Dockery says the Marines updated how it reacts to engine warning codes as well as the way people on the ground handle an emergency. A judge eventually awarded the father of the victims, Don Yoon, just under $18 million. A decade later, the colonel says the skies over Miramar are busier but safer. Pia Montavati Sud says the neighborhood would still like the Marine Corps to be more responsive when they see a flight that appears to not follow the normal flight path. At a park near the crash site, University City will mark the anniversary Saturday by dedicating 4 trees to honor the family who died.
It's a way for the community to get together and heal and talk about it, what happened, because we've never really done it.
1 tree for each of the 4 victims. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
The sheriff's sergeant who was killed during the mass shooting in Thousand Oaks died as a result of friendly fire. The Ventura County Medical Examiner says Sergeant Ron Helis was shot a total of 6 times. 5 bullets came from the shooter, 1 from a CHP officer returning fire. The medical examiner says that's what proved to be deadly and that Helis might have survived the other wounds. A total of 12 people were killed in the Thousand Oaks shooting. The results from last night's election are now certified. Democrats secured a number of notable victories in local races. Those include mayor's races in Escondido and National City, plus city council races in Vista, La Mesa, Carlsbad, and Imperial Beach. The local Democratic Party chairwoman says the Trump presidency has motivated more people to volunteer for campaigns and run for office.
We hold candidate trainings, and we had over 300 people come through our candidate trainings very early on. People are activated, they're interested, they want to step up, they want to do their part.
Local offices are officially nonpartisan in California, but mayors and city council members are often served as a pipeline for political parties to recruit candidates for higher office. One of San Diego's biggest holiday events is underway in Balboa Park. This is a look at December nights, which features a mix of live music, food, lights, displays, and shopping. The event runs until 11 Friday and Saturday nights. The weather is expected to be clear for the thousands of people expected to attend. Dajia Swad has details in the weekend forecast.
A day of improvement here across the Southwest. Will continue to watch that moisture press its way out towards our east. In the last 6 hours here in San Diego County has been on the dry side, and that's going to continue through tonight. But as we recap our rainfall totals from yesterday, here is a look at the highest that were reported. Middle Fork, Little Creek, 4.56 inches of rain. Out towards John Wayne Airport, 3.49 inches of rain. Here across San Diego, from the airport all the way into the mountains, we got some listed for you. So Thousand Trails, 3 inches, a little bit more than 3 inches of rain reported at the San Diego Airport, 2.60 inches of rain. Birch Hill coming in at 2.15, and Borrego Palm Canyon coming in at a little over 1 inch. So there was a lot of precipitation here yesterday. Now tonight, completely different story. Dry conditions will be taking over. 45 in Borrego Springs, 41 in Oceanside, and 54 in San Diego with mainly clear conditions, and remain on this clear side of things, mostly sunny into your Saturday as high pressure builds into the north, getting a warm flow as we get a slightly offshore flow, and that's going to help temperatures feel a bit more on the milder side. We were definitely feeling cool with all that precipitation, now starting to warm back up for your Saturday, topping off at 69 in San Diego as well as in Oceanside, looking at a high of 72 in Borrego Springs and 53 in Mount Laguna. Now, as we continue into early week, still going to be looking at dry conditions, but noticing some cooler air as this trough right here brings some cooler air in from the north. So as we head into your extended forecast, into the 70s for Sunday, then back into the 60s for your Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday near that coast. Also going to get a bit of a bump in temperatures on Sunday inland with a high of 75. Looking at partly sunny conditions in towards the mountains through this weekend and into early next week with temperatures in the 50s for your highs. Out towards the deserts in the 70s for your extended forecast with dry weather. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your meteorologist, Dajia Swad. Back to you.
More trouble for the stocks as Wall Street ends the week with another sell-off. I talked about this in some other of the week's business news with SDSU marketing lecturer Mira Kopik. So, Miro, it has been a crazy, awful week for the stock market with major declines. Can you tell us what are the contributors to this major plunge?
You know, it's been an extraordinarily volatile week, and there's a lot of factors, and some of them we've repeated over time. We know that the interest rates are impacting business. The Federal Reserve is looking to increase the rates in a couple of weeks by 1/4 point, which means more borrowing costs for consumers and for businesses. We know, in particular, this past weekend at the G20 summit, the president indicated some big changes, positive changes in the trade war against China, that we were going to not raise tariff rates for 90 days. The Chinese were going to bring in much more agricultural imports and potentially reduce tariffs on autos. And then from that moment on, the president's advisors have had conflicting agreements or comments. And so the stock market really reacted because we really don't have an agreement. So the Chinese tariff war is a major issue. The president then threatened to pull out of NAFTA, and that means that Congress only has 6 months to approve the brand new U.S., Mexico, Canada agreement. And there's a lot of issues in Congress right now. Yesterday, the CFO of Huawei, a big Chinese company, was arrested in Canada because the U.S. required this. And so what's occurring is now the Chinese are going to be pressured not to really give in, make a lot of concessions during this because they need to get this resolved because it's a big black eye for China. And then on top of that, the president still hasn't resolved the aluminum and steel tariffs that he's imposed for several months from all countries around the world, and everything that uses aluminum and steel, the prices are going up. So consumers and businesses are really concerned. It's disrupting the supply chain. It's causing a lot of volatility, and there isn't really any answers in sight.
So as a result, are all stocks across the board hurting, or are some faring better than others?
You know, for the most part, most stocks have been impacted negatively. Some of the stocks that have been impacted very, very negatively are technology stocks like Amazon and Google and Netflix, and those stocks. Bank stocks have been crushed because of the interest rate issues. And then a lot of companies around the world that rely on a global supply chain and global consumers have been impacted. So there's not a lot of refuge right now for investors. The best thing at the moment is to kind of hold and don't do panic selling, and that's what investment advisors would probably tell you.
So after that terrible news, we'll move on to better news for consumers and for SDG&E ratepayers. The company announced this week a proposal to do away with the high usage surcharge. What can you tell me about that proposal?
Well, it's interesting because the high usage surcharge was actually implemented by the California Public Utilities Commission in November of 2017. And the goal was really to encourage energy conservation. So if you use more than 4 times your energy allotment based on what you use in a house, you'd get this surcharge, which is double the kilowatt hour rate that you pay. And we already pay the highest electricity rates in the country, in California and in San Diego in particular. So this summer was the hottest, August was the hottest month on record. A lot of consumers used their air conditioning. Many of them crossed this high usage charge threshold. Over 100,000 households saw their electric bills rise from $30 and above, some people hundreds of dollars. So a lot of people complained, and SDG&E listened because it's almost 8% of their total customer base. And so SDG&E wrote a letter to the CPUC and said, hey, we'd like to remove this because it's really impacting our consumers. It's a great PR play. But if the CPUC says no, SDG&E does have some options. They can actually we pay a different rate in the summer over the fall, so they can reduce the summer rate and increase the fall rate, so then we don't pay as much in the summer. Ratepayers actually get a climate credit, one in April, one in October. SDG&E can move that in August to offset that for high usage. And at the end of the day, SDG&E can actually increase our baseline so no household will be impacted by the high usage rate. So there's some things that SDG&E can do once we get a ruling from the CPUC.
So it's a wait and see.
Wait and see.
Mira Kopik, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.